Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. We actually had a lot of fun today. It was just the old man and
Hello, everyone.
and welcome
crew.
back to
Hey,
the
we're live on
RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. After many different presentations from different site members through Monday, Tuesday. And actually it's kind of, I almost have like a backlog of stuff that I need to talk about with site members. So Brian blah for a good hour or so today. But I think on balance, site members gave them some tidbits that they could maybe take away and help them in their trading days. For your free version here, of course, I like to operate off these simple chart decks. I think the general message here was U.S. dollar is itself, the index is still working higher. I wonder if now we're on the other side of the big Brexit event, whether there will actually be any follow-through enthusiasm out of the UK. And actually, I was a little surprised. One headline that I read overnight was we just spent like 5 years in uncertainty over Brexit, and now Brexit is actually done. Mr. Johnson has injected a whole bunch more new uncertainty into our lives. So we might be seeing to a certain degree buy the rumor, sell the news kind of scenario with European currencies. I'm on balance. I'm not enthusiastic about investing in Europe and European currencies. But also, too, risk off is coming off appreciably here. So that's conversation about the Japanese yen as well. So when we put this sort of two together, it doesn't really surprise me to see the U.S. dollar index up. So we've got sort of a calm after the storm out of Europe, and we have risk off Japanese yen's coming back down to its original bottom. We'll actually see whether this really is a bottom or not now. You can see we are back into reload zones here on the yen. If this really is a risk off scenario, this yen really has to turn here. Lots of conversations about my wonderful bond trade. The cool part about it is I'm still short. The shitty part about it is I missed my profit window, and now I've missed my re-entry window. But technically, I'm still in the one trade, so we'll see what happens here. Only time will tell. And it was interesting, too. A month or two ago, we talked about how the talking heads were looking for some sort of dip against this 170, and they sure got it hard, eh? But nonetheless, the one of these that actually is hanging in there fairly well, keep in mind, we got a sell signal, inside bar reversal there. You can see the little line on the end. We now have a fractal top on the U.S. dollar, or excuse me, on the U.S. bond market. So that's done. Put a fork in her. If anything, counter trend rallies back up against the top end of the range, I'll be hunting whether I should go buy like a September or maybe even a December put. I don't know. But the one market that's hung in here pretty well and hasn't totally crapped out is the gold. So I still kind of think we're range bound. We're stuck in this range. Wicks and tails like to be eaten, so they went up, took the market up into this wick. Interestingly, unlike Bitcoin, where they took the market up into the wick and blasted it higher, we'll look at that in a few minutes. In this particular case, they took it up into that wick, and interestingly enough, right up against this midpoint trend line we've talked about in the past, and this channel here, and just rejected hard. But the good part about it for you gold bugs is, of course, we have not broken through this low. This is technically still a higher closing high, so we haven't smiled out here yet. But now the big debate is going to be, okay, how does she act when we come back up against these highs here? So jury's still out. As I sort of said to you before, can't really be a buyer here. I'd have to, one low, two lows. Now maybe if we get a third low that develops, you can see where my bought long entry is here, 1578. So it's starting to clean up. We might be setting up a new bot long, but remember too seasonality and look at things like RSI studies. That's not a sign of strength. If anything, that big fat M there means we actually are working a downtrend right now. So, of the three risk off assets, gold actually looks relatively the best. Interesting about that risk on, risk off conversation, you notice that the crude oil put in one hell of a turn here. Right through our sort of seasonal window here. And we've been talking about this recently. A lot of the oil stocks that I follow, they all jumped up violently here this morning. So I do like the idea of this oil market putting in some sort of bottom, and the headlines today, and it really bugs me how the public can get so played. But now the headlines are, oh, coronavirus, turns out it's not really that big of a deal, and the Americans are already starting to work on vaccines, and yes, the situation inside China. There's this guy Zero Hedge, who people are actually claiming as a Russian mole, and is actually like paid to inject fear and uncertainty and freak people out. He's putting out tweets that this is all like biological warfare, and that it's connected to the AIDS virus and all that, just trying to stoke the fire. Come on, more fear, more fear, more fear. I don't know whether we should get sucked into that stuff. I won't go on anymore about coronaviruses and stuff here. But the long and short of it here is the old seasonal play is buy your unleaded in the middle of February, sell it the middle of May, and made money 9 out of the past 10 years. And lo and behold, I saw, earlier today, people were squawking about how unleaded gasoline prices have all of a sudden mysteriously rebounded and are enjoying a nice rally. Go figure. What I would just simply say is seasonally, this is exactly when this is supposed to bottom. So, if you are interested in energy stocks, I think definitely this is a window we need to pay attention to. Speaking of stocks, and obviously, Bitcoin's enjoying further rallies here. So, I'm very interested in the crypto space here for the stock market. Here's a couple names for you to chew on. This is a more senior, it's only $1, but it's a more senior name within the sort of crypto stock space. They are a miner, and lo and behold, you notice reload zones off of massively big ranges, and now cute little reload zones off of these rallies, and we're filling in gaps. And lo and behold, gee whiz, we've got an up day. And, this isn't a buy signal unto itself, but it is anecdotal evidence. And, on TRI, I was pleased to see this morning people were like, yep, I'm starting to get fills. I placed my bids against the bottom end of ranges in reload zones, and now I am a shareholder. Well, it is what it is. I really don't mind. And actually, there's quite a few names that this sort of my intermediate list. Things like Riot, if you want to play Novogratz. I think you could sit there and ride on Novogratz's tails. Everybody should see the... Actually, this is not... Beg your pardon. Oh, that was a horrific error on Brian's part. Here's Novogratz. Same sort of thing, just coming in against the bottom end of ranges. I like these names in here. I like being a buyer, and full disclosure, I am long. And then that other one that we looked at, here's another example of crypto stock. The chart should speak for itself. Those are sort of more medium, and $1.50. Not really blue chip, but more medium names. If you want to have some fun in this space, there's crazy little stocks like this Netcoins, where they just rolled the stock back. So of course all old shareholders are totally destroyed. And you can see the W's that they're trying to put in here. Interesting ideas. Capitalism is, making money. Being a capitalist is all about, of course, stepping in on names before they go crazy, and then selling as the public goes crazy and prices get bid up. So, there's a couple names, and I just showed you about, I guess, two or three names in the space here that I think are all definitely in my wheelhouse. And I think I told everybody I am long all these names. So, take it for whatever it's worth. Looking at the corn itself, climbing the wall of worry. Really, just yet another example of Wyckoff checks, consolidation, dump into previous breakout levels, turn it back up, and away we go. Climbing the wall of worry, can you see the stair-step process? I mean, this is so capitalism 101. Just boom, 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 boom. It's quite remarkable, really. So this is, in essence, you probably heard me say, higher highs and higher lows defines a bull market. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing here. Hats off to anybody who took the W and said, look, I'm going to shoot for a 50% rule tag as my profit objective. And she's just slowly climbing her way up here. So, not really anything shocking here, ironically enough. This is the toughest part about trading. Oh, here comes a nugget. Get your notepads out. I have found in my 30 years, and even now teaching people for 5 years in earnest, it's really easy to tell you, look, this is what you need to see. Find a W, 50% level, greater than 2 to 1 if you buy the W. Look to take profits at 50% roll, risk to new lows. That's it. That's the secret. I was telling people in the lounge, in the daily brief today, I learned that 30 years ago. Still works just as much 30 years ago as it does today. It's quite another thing altogether to actually do it. That's the hard part. I actually find that everybody, what's the secret to investing? What's the secret? What's the secret? I just told you the secret. It's so easy. But the hard part is actually just doing it. That's the hard part. That's why we have to plan. That's why we have to clearly articulate ahead of time what it is. If we see it, we got to act. And then, of course, how do we define success? How do we define failure? And act. You got to do it. That's the secret to this game, people. Also, too, and I really tried to drive this home with the site people here today, that this was such a beautiful example of tax loss selling, brand new year, basically hit the reset button, new venture cap investing money can come into the market, because keep in mind they get funded on an annual basis, and we start the process all over again. Really good example of very typical seasonal bottoming process. Is it a good idea to come into this trade now? I don't think so. What I'm really worried about here now, and I scolded a few people on the site, be very careful about alts are bad. Don't say it! What I'm worried about here, of course, is Bitcoin has some sort of big, $1,000 blow off top move here, and of course the public all Bitcoin, and that of course marks our top. So if anything, and it was kind of cool, the sort of feedback through the broadcast this morning and chatting in the lounge is we don't think that the public is quite back into the space just yet. Did hear talk also recently that there's going to be a new Silk Road auction. And we were sort of playing connect the dots about things like halvening, previous year cycles. So there is this new proposed Bitcoin Silk Road auction. This was the behavior through 2015-16 through that particular, U.S. Marshal's Office auctioning of Bitcoins. And do we get this kind of behavior into this event, right? You can see wicks and tails. And I've sort of talked recently about how I kind of am thinking I'm leaning towards this kind of scenario. And I get the feeling, and notice this market symmetry study, it doesn't ever look exactly the same, but gee whiz, it sure looks very similar, right? So I'm looking for this nutso $1,000, $2,000 candle here. And gee whiz, coming into that Silk Road auction, what a coincidence. So I do see everything sort of gelling here to create this kind of scenario where we get a blow off top and then the big dump following that event. And interestingly enough, we're going to actually get a really, 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 really good tell as to the health of Bitcoin, whether this really is the next stage. Well, maybe I shouldn't tell you guys. Yeah, you know what? I want to hear in the comments and the feedback, because we do have about 3 or 4 people that love watching this and comment every day. But I want to hear in the feedback and in the comments of this video. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that kind of crap. But tell me if you want to hear the secret tell. Because I talked about it in the daily brief at length with the good folks at TRI. But I'd be just curious to see whether you YouTubers would like that information or not. Brian, just having fun with you. So, she's up. She's pointing higher. You saw that fractal kind of conversation, 50% rules. Wicks and tails like to be eaten. So, I mean, I don't have any reason to step in front of this right now. And if anything, we spent lots of time in the daily brief talking about, okay, so, if you want to play the alts, don't chase. For God's sakes, don't chase. I think there are a lot of names that are Wing out here, but don't chase. Work bids at your levels. And get out there and have some fun. I think you're probably going to know when this rally's over. You see this well-defined rolling top here on this bull poop index. I think the top will look something like this. That's not here now, so there's no hurry. Here's a really good analogy of, great little bottom breakouts, huge rallies, but what happens to the public that chase and buy up top? Boom! So don't chase. So, I hope that helps you. I do have to head off and teach a class here shortly. So, as I said, I'll give everybody the YouTube opportunity. I need to see at least a half a dozen people ask for this secret tell in Bitcoin before I'll share it with the YouTube audience. Brian, you're such a tease. All right, have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and bye for now.